Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Now, just for our late arrivers, if you notice who should be in your group, and then you notice them coming through the door, just flag them down so they can come to your table. But otherwise, as long as they fill an empty spot, then we're all good. It's actually a real treat for me to be able to share with you folks today the things that I've been doing. So normally it's a crowd of very unfamiliar faces that I'm presenting to. So it's actually really fun to be able to play for the hometown crowd here. So what I want to share with you today is one idea to help us help our students learn. And part of this is my own growth and journey as a teacher from way back when, about 12 years ago, at a different school, teaching physics. So at that time, I was absolutely convinced that I was a physics teacher. But in those 12 years, I've learned that that's not quite the case. And in fact, I really teach this. I really teach brains. I'm a brain teacher, and learning about the brain and our students' brains has been invaluable for helping me do my job better. There's all sorts of amazing things that we can learn about how the brain works, all the interesting parts and their functions. But that's not our main focus today. We want to take a look at how the brain thinks and learns. So I'm hoping that from what we go through today, at least in your brains, we'll at least have a fair bit of this going on. So I would like to begin by asking you a question. In your baskets, there are multiple choice letters. So you should have 3 per basket. If you happen to have a 4th person at your table, maybe a neighboring group can help you out there. With Tiki over here. Okay, now these multiple choice letters I use routinely with my own classes. And I train the students in a process for how to use these. So we take a minute to quietly read the question and decide on your response without any discussion with your neighbors. So here I'm getting you to think about how we can help our students improve. And so it's a quick survey of results. So if you could please hold up your multiple choice answers. Please hold them up nice and high. And we'll take a look around the joint here. And oh, your C is stolen, though. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So based on that quick survey, so there's quite a variety in the results there. D was a very popular answer, it seems. D was very popular. But the others were strongly represented as well. Now, a second question that I want us to think about to start things off this morning is, what personality traits or characteristics in our students do we think are critical or crucial for success within our subject area? Now, we're going to make use of the whiteboards and the markers that you have in front of you. And we'll have a quick discussion with the people at your table. It'll take about 5 minutes for this. And I would like you to choose a role for each member of your group. So one person in your group can be the manager. One person in the group can be the official recorder on the whiteboard. And I'd like one person to be the official speaker, who's ready to share the ideas with the rest of us. So please choose your roles and discuss the question.
Do you want to just join?
Go. That's okay. You're fine with 2. Yeah. Thank you very much. I know, once you start teachers talking. Now, in my class, we would, at this point, take some time to have the groups share some of their results. We have a lot of groups here today, so we'll just have a quick share from a few of the groups. When we do this, I've trained my students how to use the whiteboards. So one person from the group will hold up the whiteboard so that everybody in the room can see what is written on it. And then the speaker of the group, I would like you to just share one point that you've come up with. So I think what we'll do is we'll go down this row of groups here. And maybe the outside person can hold up the whiteboard and the speaker can just briefly share one point that they mentioned. So can we start with Catherine and David's group?
All right, well, just picking one off there, I think maybe the ability to take risks and not being afraid to make a mistake and then actually learn from them. If you don't try, then you can't possibly succeed. So, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Marilyn's group?
Oh dear, okay. You don't have a manager. So I think the one we agreed on was work ethic / curiosity.
Okay, thank you very much. James' group?
Pick our number 3, which was optimism, a positive outlook, that kind of positivity towards learning.
Okay, thank you very much. Bob's group?
So we'd say internalizing feedback, so kind of coachable and moldable. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. Janessa's group?
Perseverance in tedious tasks.
Thank you. Triffin's group?
Pretty well the same as the others. One thing I is trust a safe classroom environment.
Thank you. And Josephine's group?
Persistence. Follow through with ideas instead of trying.
Great, great. A very quick question, pedagogical question for you. I had only got my presentation started this morning, and I've given you this task to do with the whiteboards. What was the purpose of me designing this workshop that way? Any ideas? Any ideas? Arita?
Maybe to engage us in the process and just to draw us in.
To engage you, to draw you in, to do
Like your voice is heard, like within your group.
to help people's voices be heard. Generate a positive attitude, Mike?
To show us how to use the whiteboard so we can use them in our class.
TT? For me, as a teacher, I'm teaching you right now. I get to go around and I get this short glimpse of what's actually going on in your heads. As it comes, it appears on the whiteboards, as I hear it in your discussions. This is very, very valuable. Now, so you mentioned that these groups have shared their points, and I think for the rest of the groups that didn't have a chance to share, you would be a lot of the points we have in common. So what I would like to focus on today is one very important characteristic that came up on many of your boards and described in a very particular way, and that is the idea of grit. So you may have heard about this in the news. When this research article was published a couple of years ago, it kind of made the rounds in the papers. And in case you're not familiar with the idea of grit, this perseverance and passion for long-term goals, let's turn to the professional guru, Angela Lee Duckworth, who is a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, and she'll give a quick description. She'll give a quick description of grit.
Learn quickly and tried to predict which children would advance farthest in competition. We studied rookie teachers working in really tough neighborhoods, asking which teachers are still going to be here in teaching by the end of the school year. And of those, who will be the most effective at improving learning outcomes for their students? We partnered with private companies asking which of these salespeople is going to keep their jobs and who's going to earn the most money. In all those very different contexts, one characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. And it wasn't social intelligence, It wasn't good looks, physical health, and it wasn't IQ. It was grit. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Grit is having stamina. Grit is sticking with your future, day in, day out, not just for the week, not just for the month, but for years, and working really hard to make that future a reality. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. A few years ago, I started studying grit in the Chicago public schools. I asked thousands of high school juniors to take grit questionnaires, and then waited around more than a year to see who would graduate. Turns out that grittier kids were significantly more likely to graduate, even when I matched them on every characteristic I could measure. Things like family income, standardized achievement test scores, even how safe kids felt when they were at school. So it's not just at West Point or the National Spelling Bee that grit matters, it's also in school, especially for kids at risk for dropping out. To me, the most shocking thing about grit is how little we know, how little science knows about building it. Every day, parents and teachers ask me, how do I build grit in kids? What do I do to teach kids a solid work ethic? How do I keep them motivated for the long run?
So this is her definition of grit. And I think we'll agree it's a characteristic that we would certainly like to see in our own students. From her research, with her grit survey that she developed, she measured the grit of a wide swath of the population who had achieved various levels of education. And those who only had some high school education had quite a wide range of grit scores. Those who actually graduated from high school have a much more narrow and defined range of grit, in the higher end, of course. And correspondingly for graduating from university. So there seems to be a very strong correlation between a high level of grit and these levels of educational achievement. Isabel.
I just have a quick, what is negative 2? What do those values mean?
We're getting into the statistics here. So I think they normalize the scores across some range. So whatever value they chose to normalize them against. So the grit questionnaire that she developed goes something like this. You have your multiple choice letters. So please read over. And no discussion with your neighbors. Now, I tell my students, don't look around at everybody else's results. It's really just for me. So eyes to the front, please, everybody. And hold them up. Hold them up. Okay, thank you very much. It wouldn't be too surprising to learn that within this group here, having had a fair bit of achievement in our lives, we're scoring fairly high on... we're scoring in this zone on this question here. So this is a sample question measuring your persistence. So how focused you are on your task or goals. Now, I don't need you to show me the answer for this question. I can guess what it'll be. But this is their effort measurement as well. Now, one of the very interesting things that came out of this research was a result that grit has a slight negative correlation to IQ, meaning that students with a higher IQ tend to have a lower grit level. This is a very interesting result. Why do you think this might be the case? Why do you think? Sonia?
There was actually a study done about this not that long ago that I remember reading about it, which resonated with me, that the students with the higher IQ don't have to work for so long as they go through the earlier stages of education, and therefore they don't learn that gritty work ethic that is necessary for those who have to work harder to achieve. And so at some point it catches up. For some it's high school, for some it's university, but at that point they find
like any students you know? Thank you very much.
Chris,
So, yes, ma'am.
so I just want to throw in there that maybe it's possible, I just was working theory, that kids with learning disabilities, when they're younger, work so hard and get such little results that they end up giving up later on because they see no point.
Thank you. So the main question for us is, if this is such a highly desired characteristic in our students, what can we do as teachers to help our students become more gritty? And I think a key to that, and many researchers think, a key to that is a better understanding of the nature of intelligence. So when you think of intelligence, there may be a few individuals who just sort of spontaneously pop into mind. Well, one of them might be this fellow here, and another might be this fellow here. And so a very important question is, where does intelligence come from? And what is the true nature of intelligence? So here's an important question for us to think about. Take a moment to read it over. Okay, hold them up, please. Thank you very much. So there was quite a range to the results there. Overall, if there was an overall score, we were tending to score in this zone here. But there's some there and there's some down here. And this has a very important effect on our mindset as teachers. Now, if you ask this question to the general student population, about 40% of the population will choose these answers. Another 40% will choose these, and 20% are hard to classify. They don't neatly slot into one of those. So what does scientific research tell us about our level of intelligence? This research largely didn't exist when I went to teachers' college. It's something that has really developed over the last decade or so. So it was certainly something I was not familiar with from my professional training. What the research is suggesting, very strongly suggesting, is that the brain itself works a lot like a muscle. And with muscles, it's no great surprise that when you do your exercise or your training, your strength and stamina improve. Well, it turns out the same is true for our brains. So when we work intensively at learning something new, our brain cells grow. And in particular, it's these long spindly connections between those brain cells called the dendrites. These grow, and this is the physical mechanism for learning itself. And in recent research, we've been able to measure changes in the thickness of areas of the brain after students have undergone intensive training in certain tasks. So something is happening in our brains. And this is true for humans of all ages, so there is still hope for us. When we go through the process of learning. So between those brain cells, those dendrites are forming connections. The more connections, the better they do their job. So brain exercise is literally changing the strength of our brain, and in a very real sense, it's changing our level of intelligence. Now, not all exercise is the same. Not sure if there's Sudoku fans out there. But certain tasks don't help the brain increase its strength. And they tend to be tasks that are unchallenging or fairly repetitive. So this explains why my handwriting has never changed. It's never improved over the last 30 years. It's still pretty craptacular. This is why, for most of us, our driving skills don't improve, even though we're doing it every day. Because we're not doing it in a thoughtful, deliberate way that produces improvement. So you have to be continuously challenged. Or in fact, those connections and that mass that you've developed in your brain will shrink. Not too different from our physical training. So when you do reach those tasks that you have totally mastered, even though it's really fun to do, if we want ourselves and our students to improve, we have to very quickly move up to that next level of training and challenge. So this brings us to the idea of mindset, and this is really the main theme for today. So our idea that your amount of intelligence really can't change is what is called the fixed mindset. So more or less saying that, well, you're kind of born with that amount of intelligence, so you've either lucked out or you haven't, and there really isn't too much you can do about it. Fixed mindset. And as I showed before, about 40% of students agree with this view of intelligence. The other point of view, that intelligence is flexible, it can grow and be trained, is what we call the growth mindset. And this is what we want to encourage amongst our students, so that there is hope for all of us to make improvements in our level of intelligence. So this is our definition of the growth mindset. Your brain gets smarter through long-term, deliberate practice. Now, I'm not sure if we'll have time today to talk about this much, but we're going to think about this idea of the growth mindset and its implications for our students and the way that we teach. Now, I'd like to take a moment to show you this video that has been made by the Khan Academy. And they have picked up this growth mindset and are running with it.
Nobody's born smart. We all start at zero. Can't talk, can't walk, certainly can't do algebra. Adding, reading, riding a bike. Nobody's good at anything at first. There was a time when Einstein couldn't count to 10. And Shakespeare had to learn his ABCs just like the rest of us. Thankfully, we're born to learn. Slowly, surely, you stumble, slip, crawl, fall, and fail, and fall. Frustrating, confusing, trying, struggling, until one day, you walk. One foot in front of the other, one idea on top of the next. Each wrong answer making your brain a little bit stronger. Failing is just another word for growing, and you keep going. This is learning. Knowing that you'll get it, even if you haven't gotten it yet. Because the most beautiful, complex concepts in the whole universe are built on basic ideas that anyone, anywhere, can understand. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you only have to know one thing. You can learn anything.
Okay. So what I'd like to do next is share with you this summary of some of the brain research that helps us to understand what takes place when we learn. The very short article that you have in front of you provides a bit more information than what I've quickly gone over. And then on the second side, there is space for you to answer a few questions about how these ideas can help you doing your job as a teacher. So in this activity, we're going to take about 10 minutes. And so managers, can you hold up your hand if you're the official manager? Official manager. Thank you. So please help your group to focus their efforts on reading the article. I know these are teachers and it can be challenging, but you can do it, managers. And recorder, encourage your group to jot down their thoughts on that second page. And speaker, be prepared to share some of the ideas that your group comes up with. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take 10 minutes. Managers, get your groups started reading. When your group has finished reading, so managers, I encourage you to help your group share your ideas and your thoughts as you're jotting them down on your sheet.
All aspects of learning, so listening, when the teacher is talking, making sure that kids are listening, also paying attention and watching, so if it's something up on the screen, to be paying attention to it, and then reading their work and writing. And I feel that this definitely works for me too, because I'm very much a note taker, and I feel like if I don't write it down, I won't actually be able to see it. So I feel for kids who kind of identify themselves as auditory learners, for example, they just want to listen. I feel like they really do need to write things down and then read what they've written down.
Thank you very much. Eric.
So under the behaviors that may not be helpful, I mentioned the idea that a lot of students want to use their phone to take pictures of notes. And they never actually write it or interact with it. They think if I got it on my phone, I've got it. And there's such a superficial they really don't believe that. If we were to hand out a worksheet or to notes in class, there has to be something that they interact with. There has to be something that they fill in. That's some missing parts. If it's all laid out on a piece of paper, then we're breaking things off.
Thank you. Thank you. David?
There was also another study about memory and the importance of actually handwriting versus typing, because it's not just the area of the skill that grows, but the information being put through it is remembered in that context. So if they hear it as one area, then writing is another, and then rereading it stores in different parts of the brain, so it is more likely to remember it by doing, than rather just taking a picture where they probably don't even read it the first time, let alone hearing the context of when they're taking the picture as well.
Thank you. Barry?
Well, to riff on what David and Eric were saying, it's really important that you, I guess the expression that David said was active reading. I call it having a dialogue with the text. You never just sit down and read a text without a pencil in your hand. And then you have the same sort of, you interact with it in the same way you interact with an interlocutor where you're going, well, what did you just say? What does that mean? And why would you say that? And that makes you think of this. But you do that all with your pencil as you're reading. And I think that's a really important skill for the kids to foster encouraging the kids, is that they read in that active way rather than sort of passively staring at a bunch of words that they don't read.
Thank you. And one more.
One of the things I've noticed that I don't think I knew when I first started teaching was that sometimes just to allow there to be a kind of hubbub occasionally while students turn to somebody beside them and just make a comment or to ask a question that's on task. I mean, it's not always on task, but often what they're doing is they get an opportunity rather than putting up their hand because they're shy to say something in class or to comment, let them comment comfortably to the person beside them. Even if it's just an offhand comment about what we're talking about or to ask a question I'm not sure about what that is learning. It's part of the learning. So let that hubbub be.
Thank you. Thank you. So lots of great ideas, and I encourage you, with your colleagues, your fellow department members, to continue talking about these ideas and see how you can make use of them for your own class. Now, this idea of the growth mindset that we're focusing on has been subject to rigorous studies, and so I just wanted to share the results of that with you, because I know from my experience, 17 years teaching now, I've seen no shortage of sorts of fads and gimmicks go through the system, and they have largely been unsubstantiated and, quite frankly, ineffective. But I wouldn't be here sharing this with you if I didn't think it works for my students and if there wasn't a solid body of scientific research supporting its effectiveness. So one of the landmark studies was this one on implicit theories of intelligence by Carol Dweck. She's the guru for the growth mindset. If you would like to learn more about this stuff, just send me an email later on, and I could send you copies of papers and no shortage of things to satisfy your curiosity. So please do feel free. But some of the important results from this scientific research, they were studying grade 7 and 8 math students over a course of about 5 years. And in a carefully controlled study, they subjected one cohort of the students to growth mindset training So something not too different from what you have just gone through with that sheet, the reading exercise and the writing exercise. And then others were subjected to a controlled study. So they were taught on learning skills, organizational skills, and so on, but not the growth mindset. And the results for their math scores going from fall of grade 7 to spring of grade 8, we can see for the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. In a separate study of college-level students, they took a look at how many of those students earned a certain number of credits. 12 credits was critical for them for graduation. And in the general population, students who had experienced the growth mindset training had 64% completing the requirements versus 61%. But in particular, students from a disadvantaged population, African American students, normally complete 45%. 45% of them complete this requirement of credits. But after the growth mindset training, a full 55% did. So for that cohort of students who tend to have difficulties achieving, this mindset is a very, very helpful one. Here's another example of that. They were looking at college level. They call it developmental math, so sort of remedial math program. And the dropout rate originally was 20% for that program. And after training with the growth mindset, the dropout rate is down to 10%. So from quite a variety of studies, and there's more of them, there seems to be a very robust body of evidence that it helps students in a variety of facets of their learning. Some to do academically better, some to stick with the academics. And I think that's a goal that we can all agree with. So an important task for us is to recognize the growth mindset in our students and also in ourselves, and contrast that with the fixed mindset. So just to compare their characteristics, the fixed mindset, the idea that your intelligence is basically static, it's kind of what you were born with. This tends to produce students who want to look smart. Whereas with the growth mindset, so the intelligence can be developed and trained and increased, this produces students who look for challenges. So they want to seek out those learning experiences because they know it's going to help them grow intellectually. So when it comes time to face challenges, those of the fixed mindset tend to avoid those challenges, and those of the growth mindset embrace the challenges. So if we're looking to encourage that risk-taking aspect of our students' behavior, if they have that fixed mindset, they're going to avoid situations that might demonstrate to the class, to the teacher, or themselves that they are not smart. And so they avoid those situations. And, so when they meet obstacles in their learning, those of the fixed mindset tend to give up very quickly, very easily. Again, if they think that their self-esteem is on the line, then if they grapple intensely with some problem but fail, that becomes a major internal criticism for themselves. But those of the growth mindset persist in the face of those setbacks. When it comes time to making a substantial effort toward learning, the fixed mindset don't invest that effort, or they see that effort as just further evidence that they're not smart. While those of the growth mindset say, oh yeah, I'm going to have to work hard at this, but you know, I'm going to get it. And when it comes time for feedback, as we're trying to help our students along, fixed mindset, they tend to ignore the feedback. Again, it just highlights their flaws as they see it. And those of the growth mindset say, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that better next time. And finally, when they see success in others, the fixed mindset feel threatened, while the growth mindset see that as a source of inspiration or something to learn from. So if you think about this set of characteristics, you'll probably agree that we've seen these characteristics in our students. And so we want to try to nurture the ones on the growth mindset side while trying to help the other bad behaviors, the less helpful characteristics, disappear. And an important part of that is how we talk to our students, because that often gives away our own perceptions of the fixed or growing nature of our students' intelligence. So if we tend to praise students based on their intelligence, oh, that was a really smart idea. What a clever suggestion. That tends to reinforce the fixed mindset. Students love that kind of praise because it feels great when they get it, but it can have the effect of making them much more fragile learners. However, if you praise them based on their choice of strategy or the amount of effort that they apply, that encourages the growth mindset. Those are the habits and behaviors that we want to foster as teachers. And so we want to avoid linking the results of academic assessments, formal or informal, with a student's intelligence. And for many students, after years in the educational system, especially the ones who haven't been very successful, this link is formed very, very strongly. And so they withdraw from the academic opportunities that we think, why are you doing this? If you just did a little bit of work, you'd be doing fine. So it's because of that fixed mindset. So we want to help our students understand that when you meet failure, when you have those disasters or bumps along the road, that it really is just part of the learning experience. And explaining how intelligence works can help pull them out of that fixed mindset. Last September, we ran the Academic Orientation Day for the incoming grade 10s. And as one of the workshops we did was an introduction to the growth mindset. So my goal was to reproduce the interventions that you saw the data for from those researchers for our grade 10 students. So I gave them a quick presentation, and I gave them a different version of the worksheet that you have. So they went through, they read that, and then they wrote down their responses to the growth mindset. And they discussed some of their ideas with colleagues, jotting down their ideas on a whiteboard. So this was the activity that I gave them. And then I asked them, well, what are some examples of things that you had to struggle in order to do or learn? And some of these examples were very, very interesting and sweet to read, as they described their experiences being just craptacular at something. And then that process of effort, struggle, and learning. And at the end, they very proudly say, and now I'm really good at this. And the second part of this intervention asked them to write down advice for a friend who's having difficulty at school, who's feeling dumb, based on what they've learned from the growth mindset. So these two writing reflection activities are what the researchers have used. And this is what we used this past September on our grade 10 students. Now, I'll hand out a package showing the student version of this, along with a whole series of comments that I've collected from the students, just from one home forum, just so you can get a sense of the sorts of things that they reflect on, and hopefully get a sense of the value of this process. And now, so all of this was leading up to a proposal for what I would like our staff to do next year. So my proposal is this, and what I'm going to ask you folks to do is, during the course of the day, to actually vote on this. And if it looks good, then I will officially make this proposal to the admin. So we'll take the first Friday of the next school year for the academic orientation in the afternoon. It'll take place in the grade 10 home forum classes. And the students will go through a very carefully constructed and scripted lesson outlining the growth mindset that has many aspects similar to what we've done here today. And that this will be led by the grade 10 home form teachers. So my goal for myself is to put together basically a bulletproof lesson that you can very easily follow, and you can help the students learn this idea, reflect on it, in about 1 hour's time. And in doing so, as educators, I understand that this may be pushing us out of the comfort zone into what I hope is the growth zone, to provide you with some learning opportunities. So you'll have a chance to try out some of our multiple choice letters, maybe the whiteboards, and to lead an interactive, group-oriented lesson where the students learn the growth mindset. So I'm hoping that you would see this as a valuable side benefit for you as well. Now, I also hope that it won't push you into your panic zone there. So that will be my job, to come up with a very carefully designed lesson that I think we can easily manage. So this is my proposal, and we're going to hand out both copies of the student reflections and a little ballot for you. And what I'd like you to do on the ballot is just check off you're in favor of this proposal or you're not in favor. I won't take it personally if this is something you don't want to do. But I think it's very valuable to give you the opportunity to think about it and decide as a staff. And just put the ballot in my box. So by the end of today, if you have a chance to check it off, drop it in my mailbox. And then if we have enough teachers willing to do it, I'll make the official proposal to the admin. I'm not exactly sure, but early on in September, probably on Friday afternoon. Okay.
Yes.
Yep, that's right. Okay. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for... I have a few things to hand out.
So, Chris, thank you so much. Chris and Lisa, thanks for doing all of this. Aside from the ballots going around, could I please ask, for those of you who find this growth mindset very interesting, and you might find some time in your summer relaxation to maybe, if we were to provide you with a resource, I mean, you've been talked about the value of growth mindset. We're really behind this philosophy, and we're very fortunate to have two amazing gurus and passionate people about this in our building. With that said, I know that we're not going to win everybody over, and there are some people who it's going to be a little tougher road. But for those of you who are interested, I'm going to be talking with Lisa and Chris about the possibility of purchasing resources or summer reads, and we'll go over a list of some of the books, and maybe it'll be a Carol Dweck book, or there's a ton of amazing research and resources out there. But we don't want to buy a school set and then give it to you and then it just collects dust, and it's a waste of $30, $40 a resource. But if you are really interested and would love to have a copy of the resource, student success, we actually have allocated money. It has to be used for student success purposes only, so we thought purchasing resources for our staff would be helpful. Shoot me an email and say, I want a resource, okay? And then I know how many to order. And if you don't, then I know that I don't need to purchase like a whole school set, and then we purchase for the exact amount that we need.
Can I say, I just want to say, thinking about the 3 zones here, which is really, I got that from outdoor education. They use that paradigm in outdoor education when they're trying to get kids to do, you know, those activities with ropes and stuff where they're really trying new physical challenges. If the idea of course, nobody knows who the grade 10 home form teachers would be yet, because that hasn't occurred yet. But if that process scares you and flips you into the panic zone, I want to give you a little bit of potential reassurance that the way the academic orientation could be designed if the other classes are not running at that time, let's just say, is that you would have a couple other people in your home form with you as supports. It wouldn't necessarily just be you there by yourself if you're not fully comfortable with that. I feel it's important to put that out there because it might take a few people out of the panic zone and make you feel more comfortable going into the growth zone. Because there's no doubt that it's growth zone. But like we say to the kids, you can't learn in the comfort zone and you can't learn in the panic zone. You can only learn in the growth zone. So thank you so much, Chris, for doing that.